Hello everybody, this is Bailey, and today I have a working version of my own scripting language called BayScript, which is a library extension for Java, and it's available for download now, so you can all download it and put it in your projects. So essentially what this library is an interpreter for a custom scripting language that I have made. I have a series running where I am coding a scripting language, so this is what the result of that series is going to be, this language itself. So just to go over what the language can do, there's essentially a bunch of different commands that can be run during runtime and they will be interpreted. So when you start a project and you put this library in, this library starts its own thread when you run your application and hosts all of its tasks through its own thread. So none of the tasks that this library runs will impact your frame rate in your other application. So basically this can be added to any application and it won't impact the frame rate, and it will give you a pretty powerful scripting language that will allow you to do a whole bunch of new things during runtime in your application. So in order for this scripting language to utilize the full functionality of a window, the only requirement that it has is that when you oh, actually start it, you need to pass it a canvas instance. And if you don't pass it a canvas instance, it's going to do its best to try to create a window on the screen for you. So if that doesn't make sense, I can demonstrate it. So to demonstrate it, I'm just going to create a new project and show you how easy it is to add this library. So I'm just going to come up to this new project button. I'm sure there's a similar button in Eclipse. I'm using NetBeans, so if you want to follow along, I'm using the application NetBeans, and I suggest you do the same. So yeah, that's actually open project. I want new project. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a new project. I'm going to title this example BayScript, and yeah, just finish. It doesn't matter what the main class is or anything like that. So you can see that this application is the main, or this class is the main class for the application because it has this piece of code here. And if we come over here and we run this, you can see that it just stops. There's no thread running and it's not regulated, so it's just going to run the code in here and then exit the program. So in order to get my library in, what we're first going to do is we're going to go over to Chrome and you're going to paste in this link. I have it in the description below, so yeah, if you want to follow along, just get the link in the description. And then what you're going to do is you're going to hit download. No thanks, continue to download. And it says this type of file can harm your computer. That's just because it's a Java file, and Chrome doesn't really trust Java files, but there's nothing malicious in this program. So I'm going to click keep. And this is open source, so if you don't trust it and you want to check it out, all the source code's on GitHub. You can go check it out for yourself. That will be linked in this description below as well. So now we have this jar file, and we're going to put it into our project. So if we go back to NetBeans and we come over to the side here and right click on our project and go down to properties, click on this libraries tab and then click on this button that says add jar/folder. And what we're going to do is we're going to navigate to wherever that's saved. So that is in my downloads, and here is that jar, bayscript.jar. So we're going to hit open, and now the library is installed. It's really just that simple. So hit OK. And if you go down to your project and you click plus on this libraries, you should see BayScript.jar, and you can click plus on that, and that will show you all the different Java classes from this. So if you've done everything right, you should see that. And another test is if you just come into this project and you type BayScript.invoke. All right, so this is the line of code that starts the application. So now you can see if we run this project, you can see down here, BayScript version 1.0.1, a scripting language extension for Java created by Bailey in 2015. And then it says starting listeners, no canvas established, initializing canvas, success. So as I mentioned earlier, this scripting language needs an instance of Canvas to run. And an instance of Canvas is essentially a window on the screen like this. So this is a Java object called Canvas that is seated in a window that Windows, the operating system, can understand. So basically, you just need to link BayScript to a window. And since this application didn't have a window that it created, BayScript created it itself. So this is a default window from BayScript. This will change in time. There'll be much more settings and things that you can do, and yeah, it'll just be better in the future. So this is like default. It doesn't really do anything, but there is a mouse listener attached to this object. So this window will pass information to BayScript when the mouse is inside this window, and also when you have the window selected. So currently the window isn't selected, but when the window is selected and you press keyboard buttons, it will pass the keys that you pressed to BayScript to interpret. And it's not logging them, it's just passing them as they're pressed. It's relaying the events of your keyboard back to BayScript. So then your scripts, which are listening for keyboard input, can trigger when keyboard does input. So one of the most impressive things about this is that if you notice down here, this output box is still running. The application hasn't terminated, even though there's only one line of code. So since BayScript detected that there was no canvas created by this window, it actually passes the canvas back to this Java class, and it tells this class not to terminate its run method until this window has closed. So if I hit this X button, you can see down here it says build successful, total time 2 minutes 14 seconds. So it does close on window close, which is pretty impressive because in order to create a class which did all of what this just did, you would essentially need to have a class about this size here with a thread limiter, sorry, not a thread limiter, a tick limiter, and you'd need your own mouse and keyboard listener classes, and you'd need like tick and render methods, and you'd need to create your own window over here and all that stuff. So basically all of this code from this class and this class, sorry, not that class, this class is consolidated into this one line, which is pretty sweet. It really allows you to start new projects quickly and get them running. So I said that this was a scripting language, and I haven't shown you any scripting yet, so I'm going to move on to that now. So there are a few commands in the engine now, but there is an API for you to create your own commands. You can see commands in abstract class here, so you can just instantiate command and make your own instance of a command object class and have it do whatever you want on execute, which is pretty sweet and powerful. So I'll have another tutorial on how to add your own commands to BayScript in the future, but for now I'm just going to stick with the built-in ones. And we can see what the built-in commands are if we come over to the script class and we scroll down to, down here where it says, I'm just going to search it, cmd underscore. Yeah. So there are a few commands built in. There is print, which just prints with whatever is after the command, and there's pause, and there's also load scripts. So you can load scripts from other scripts and all sorts of great stuff. So yeah, I'm going to create my first script right here. So to do that, I'm going to say string array, string equals new string array. All right, that doesn't say string. There we go. So in order for BayScript to execute, you need to pass it a string array. And you tell BayScript to execute a command by saying BayScript dot add script. And you need to give it a name. This can just be anything. I'm going to call this test. and then you need to give it the actual data that it's going to interpret. That's still not string. String. There we go. Actually, let's call it data. Okay. So what this is going to do is this is going to add a script called test to BayScript with the scripting commands data. So by default, when you create a script, it will interpret all of the files and then close. We don't want that to happen, but I guess I will show that happening. So here you go. I'm going to say cmd underscore print, which is that command that we looked up, and then hello world. And this is the data that will be passed. So you can see if I press, I hope if I press run this will work. If I press run now, you can see down here it says hello world, which is it executing this command and returning what the command is telling BayScript to do. So this command tells BayScript to print to the console this data here, and you can see that's what it's done. Now, you'll also notice that it isn't printing it more than once because it just executes this line and then it clears this whole script from memory. The script is no longer in memory. The computer can't see it. It doesn't even know that it's there. So in order to get it to print multiple times, you need to set an internal variable of the script persist to true. So if you type set persist equal to true, and then you put a comma at the end, and then you run it, you'll notice that it's not looping anymore. However, it now retains all this information in memory, which is great. So this exists, and it's just sitting there in memory. It doesn't really do anything with it. So in order to get it to execute multiple times, and it will execute it sort of cyclically, it'll go through it looping over and over and over again, line by line. You need to set another internal variable called loop equal to true. And when you do that and you run, you'll notice that it prints hello world over and over and over again, and it's printing that at the fixed tick rate of 60 ticks per second. So there are 60 hello worlds being added to the command line per second, which is pretty sweet. So there are also variables which you can define in BayScript, and I'm going to show you how you do that really quickly. I'm just going to delete that line and define. We're going to create an integer int, and we're going to title it count, and we're going to set it equal to 0 for now. And then if we run this, it's executing this over and over and over again, but there are no print commands, so we can't see what it's doing. Now, I want to reference this variable, but if I type cmd underscore print, that's not print, print count. If I type that, you'll notice that it's just printing count over and over and over again, and we don't want that. We want it to actually print out the value of count. So in order to determine the value of something, you just surround it in brackets. So what this is going to do is this is going to search all of the variables which have been defined in this script for a variable titled count. And when it finds that variable, it's going to return the value of it, and the value is determined there. So you can see if we run this, it's going to print 0 because the value of count is 0. You can also do math in a sense here. So the math that I've written into this engine is very similar to a different language called Racket, which is a derivative of Lisp. It's a pretty light derivative of Lisp. So if you know Racket math, you know BayScript math. So math in these languages come with the operation that you want to do in the front. So I want to add our value of count to 1. So just increase count, increase the printed value by 1. So to do that, I'm going to type plus count 1. And as I said before, you need to type, or you need to have brackets around whatever. Sorry, these aren't brackets. These are parentheses. You put parentheses around whatever you want to evaluate. However, since count is inside of a bigger set of parentheses, the value of it is already interpreted, so we don't have to add a redundant set of brackets. So you can see if I type, or if I hit run, it's going to print 1.0 out because all numbers are floats in the background. That's just something that I do so that my math works correctly. So you can see that it prints 1. Now, what if we want to have a sort of increasing count value? It is called count after all. What I would do is I would type set, and then the variable that I want to set is count, equal to, and then the new value is going to be plus count 1. So count is going to be set to its current value plus 1. So count is set to the current value of count plus 1. And it should return, an increasing set of numbers. So if I put the comma here and the comma here, cmd underscore print, and then count, you can see if we run this, it's going to set the value of count to, its value plus 1 at a rate of 60 times a second. So that's pretty good. You can see that it's increasing by 1, which is great. So that's pretty much BayScript as it is right now. There are a few other things worked into BayScript. I can show you one pretty quickly, which I think is cool. There are a set of methods. So currently we're defining an integer, which is, allocating space and memory for an integer at a rate of 60 times a second. And it does have, built-in Java garbage collection. So it's not actually creating this in memory, but it's just good practice to not try to create variables at a rate of 60 times a second. I mean, it can, and with garbage collection, it is disposed, but it's just not good practice. So we can put that line of code inside of what's called a method. So just like a method in Java, it's like a bundle of code which is executed on call, and usually you need to actually reference a call. But there's a built-in method which is always run. So just like public static void main is always the first method run in a Java application, the method init, spelled just like this, is always run first in a BayScript application. So whenever a BayScript script is interpreted, it searches for this method first, and if it sees init, it will execute whatever is in this set of brackets first. So this will be executed first and only once. So even though we've set persist to true and loop to true, this is only going to execute once because it is in the initializer method. So if we run it again, you'll notice that it's still doing the same thing, but it's just a little bit more. Well together. I don't know. That was bad English. It's just better. It's better to do it this way. It's better practice. And I was mentioning that that BayScript can do some additional things. So you'll notice an additional statement that I have written into BayScript is an if statement. So if I have my quotes here and the closing quotes here and a comma, I'm going to create an if statement. So I just say if colon, and then there's the expression and my brackets. So much like Racket, the condition needs to come first, and there's a whole bunch of different conditions. You can see them in, what did I call them? I think I called them actions. Yeah, if you come into the actions class in the source, you can see all the different things that can come first. So key can come first, hit can come first. That's actually not implemented yet. And then you have like logic comparisons and a whole bunch of other stuff, and it will interpret them. So what we're going to use is the key, because I said that BayScript could interpret the keyboard, and I'm going to demonstrate that now. So if key, and then you pass it the key you want to check, I'm just going to use space, is pressed, so you write true, it will execute the code in here. So if I hit run now, you'll notice that it's not printing anything down here. However, you can listen when I press space. Oh, sorry, I have to be clicked in the window. If I press space, you'll notice that it starts printing. It actually missed it. Okay, so when this window is selected, you need to be clicked on the window. Like I said earlier, it's not logging the keyboard constantly. This window needs to be selected and highlighted. So if I press spacebar, you can see that the count down here increases until I let go of spacebar. And then when I press space again, it starts counting. And it's counting up at a rate of 60 per second, just like everything else. And you can easily inverse this. So if you say false, this will count while space is not pressed. So you can see that it's counting up, and then when I press spacebar, it stops the count. So that's also pretty cool. There are also for loops which work in a similar way. For, you need to give it a value. So let's say less than 10. Count is less than 10. This whole chunk of code is going to be evaluated until this condition is met, which is a little bit dangerous because you can create for loops which never end, which will just crash BayScript. I don't really have a way to detect the endless cyclic reference yet, but I'm working on that. It's actually like, I guess, sort of an infinite recursive loop just because, but you'll notice that if I run this, it's gonna run 10 times and then stop. And unlike everything being interpreted at a rate of 60 times per second, this line is interpreted and then it doesn't care about that next 60th of a second. It's going to run these two lines until this condition is met as fast as it possibly can, just like a regular for loop works. So yeah, that's a whole bunch of different statements in BayScript. I hope you gained something from this, and as BayScript becomes more developed and just more features are added, I'm going to make little updates on this, and you can expect a video pretty soon on how to write your own commands for BayScript. So you'll be able to write your own, essentially, word to go after cmd underscore. You can have your own defining command here, and then you can pass whatever arguments you want to it later. And I'll explain all of that in the next video. So if you enjoyed this, please give it a like rating. Any questions or comments you can just put in the description down below. Once again, I'm Bailey, and I hope you enjoyed the video.